Good afternoon. Good morning. I think we've got some folks in the morning. Kevin, how are you?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm having some technical difficulties on the computer today, but we're gonna struggle through this together. I think we'll be okay though.
Yeah. Well, we'll be going digital either way. So whether you're struggling or not, there's no turning back.
I like it. I like it. I tell you, it's been way too long since we've put together a Sedaru Live. I can't remember, the last time might have been March or so. So I'm excited to be back at it.
Agreed. Yeah, I think 3-4 months is just too darn long, and it's exciting because we have a whole series of webinars that we're going to be doing that really goes through kind of the next generation of what utilities are going to be at in the future here. So exciting stuff, and I think we're on the right track.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A couple of housekeeping things for folks joining us today, and I looked at the attendee list. We've got a really nice group of people here, so thank you in advance to everybody for joining. This whole session here should take maybe 30 minutes, give or take. There will certainly be plenty of time for questions on things, and you'll have. We're going to go through a little bit of overview on some of the key points for ongoing digital and some of what we're working on here as an organization, and then Kevin and I are going to kind of share some Sedaru pieces, some demo pieces of some neat ways in the field that you can kind of focus some of your digital efforts. But as we're going through things, feel free to go ahead and ask lots of questions. These sessions are always way better when we get a lot of questions from you guys. So we want you to get as much information out of this as possible. If you haven't already, please like us and love us on your social media platforms of choice. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. We have presence in all of those places, so they become a nice alternative way to get information from us. So when we kind of think about where things are going digitally, right, and what the world is that we live in, right? You think about your personal life and maybe your life at work, at your utility, at the city that you work for. There is this state of where everything is becoming more connected, data is becoming more available to everybody across the board. Everybody in every corner of the world now, for the most part, is attached to their smartphone, which has all kinds of different data coming into it. You see the graphic of the Fitbit here, pulling in data and information here. And I think one of the big things out of this is it's expected that all of these things are going to be easy for people to use. And I think you're seeing the same kind of things, right, Kevin?
I am, and what's interesting is, for a long time, I grew up in the water utility space, and in the early days, it was kind of like, well, water utilities are, 10 years behind or whatever, still in the, 19th century, 20th century, whatever, and really that has changed, especially as of, the last 5 years. I do not see those comments being made anymore. I don't see that that stigma being put upon utilities as much as it used to. And I think that this kind of shows, I think everyone is kind of expecting a certain level of data, a certain level of real-time information, and to get with the times and to lead. Water utilities is no longer kind of in the back seat of technology. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think if we think about and talk about utilities from here, if you flip over to that next slide and we think about what are we doing, as an industry, it's really interesting, how there are many aspects of things that we're very, very much going in a digital sense, and we're probably one of the biggest ones is that last point on there where you've got a lot of generational turnover happening. And what I find interesting too is you have kids, or I say kids, like you have somebody coming in to take a role in a utility that's 25 years old, say. And he's taking over for somebody who is 60 years old, replacing 65 years old, replacing that person. That 25-year-old person has grown up in a world where they don't know what it was like before the internet existed, right? Yeah. And so to ask them to go fill out a piece of paper or fill out hundreds of pieces of paper every day is, it's really just it's a big ask. So I think we're in many ways kind of hitting a tipping point within the industry of where we need to be at. And if you pop over to that next slide there, you sort of look at where we're going here on a data revolution side, the asset management, and then really thinking about, how do we get to optimal performance? And that's what's driving this drops strategy that we're discussing and talking about here, in terms of thinking, and the first step in that is going digital. It's going digital. And so if we, Kevin, when you started working in the water industry, how did you guys record valve operations?
Yeah, it was paper forms, and then, that did evolve into, a digital system, but that digital system was fill out paper forms and then enter it into the digital system at the end of the day, right?
At the end of the day, right, yeah.
So there's still that piece where it's like, there's that transition, right? So you have, you're entering it into a computer, but that's still not, digitizing your world. It's not putting your system into a digital format that takes you as the first step to, the next level, which, can come after that. So yeah, it's, and that's changed, right? 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that was, kind of the standard. You fill out paper forms, maybe someone would do the data entry, back in the office, but, we're the times are a changing, and, we're helping utilities kind of get there, which is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about what drops as a whole, as a strategy really means. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that and have been, sort of following Sedaru and looking at the pieces that we're doing and putting together, drops is really kind of the next generation, next level of where Sedaru is and where it's going. I think many of you might know and think about Sedaru as a platform that was designed initially around connecting a lot of data systems together. And that's still the case, right? That was sort of a core piece, and trying to provide really easy, straightforward tools for people to use. And what that's evolved into is what we see here. So it's talking about going digital. It's talking about going real time. It is, and by real time meaning real time data. Because it's like you said, it's like you just referenced, Kevin. It's one thing to go digitally, in the sense of somebody's going to take all this stuff and enter it into a computer at the end of the day, right? But that's not real time. That's not giving us information right in the same spot to be able to make sharp decisions off of. Once you're doing those things, then I can think about how do I want to optimize stuff. And then I can think about being predictive. I can think about being looking forward, looking into the future. And then if I'm doing a good job with that, what kind of preemptive steps can I take, right? How do I get there in terms of cutting things off heading things off in the past before they become a problem? And then ultimately leading us to a self-driving kind of world, which I think, this is the stuff that you're in the weeds of every day from a product perspective, right? And thinking about how are we continually crafting and architecting the Sedaru product to get us there.
You bet. Yeah, and it's, the thing I like about the drops framework here is it really is a roadmap to kind of the promised land. It's mm-hmm. not all or nothing. It's not, okay, well, I'm only ready for this, so I can't do anything else. This framework is very much intended to, the D, which we'll start with today, and that's what really today's all about. We're not even going to get into any of these other items here, but just getting your system into a digital state and talking about what that means and how that can benefit, just as an early starting point. There's really no reason why any utility should not be here or cannot get here without a whole lot of effort. So that's we definitely want to show and share that it's not something where, okay, well, that's for, this area here, that's for the large utilities, or this here is for the utilities that have a lot of money. That's really not the case, with how we can, get a utility to wherever you want to be. There's always a starting point, and it's reasonable and it's achievable. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And if you hit that next slide here, let's talk to some of these things, and I'll let you kind of get the demo queued up while I'm doing that here. So I'm sure folks are anxious to kind of dive into the software and see how we're tackling some of these pieces. But the way that things exist for folks, it's amazing how many paper work orders exist out there. There's not a person that I talk to that has paper work orders that's proud of that anymore, though. Like, check out how good this paper is that we generate. Everybody knows there's better ways to do that, right? But then you see things like the last thing that's on this list here, where folks might have been collecting data digitally for a long time, because there's been tools around for a long time. But then you see where they're collecting data, but it's completely disconnected from everything else that they're collecting data on, right? They're out there, inspecting manholes, for example, or turning valves, and instead of having an ID, a valve ID that it's associated with, they're writing down, oh, it's the valve that's located at the corner of North Main Street and 12th Avenue, and then, there might be 4 valves in that intersection. So it's the valve that's in the northeast corner of North Main, and then you can imagine all the permutations of where that goes wrong, right? And having to be able to track that and to do it.
Yeah, if you think about early work order systems, like pre-2000, everything was based off of an address. There wasn't a whole lot of, the referencing some kind of, unique identifier that, linked to a GIS on a map. It was like, okay, like you said, what's the valve on this intersection? What's the hydrant on this, address? So yeah, that, all of that evolved when you have, a digital system of record.
Yeah. So, do you want to just kind of hop into the software here, Kevin? Let's take a look at a couple things and figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So,
go ahead. Sorry, Kevin.
Oh no, it's just wanted to make mention of this image here, which is one of our fan favorites. But basically, this is a utility that has storage lockers for all of their paper maps. So they had gone, from paper to digital, and these are the artifacts and the relics that remain. And it's funny because you look at box 39, and it's miscellaneous letters, maps, reports, graphs, all in a paper format. Whereas nowadays, and with Sedaru and where you can go with your utility, all of these are digital, right? There is no more archive in a box somewhere. And if you can't find it in one of these 48 boxes, just check the other 3 storage units, and maybe you'll find it there. All right. So yeah, so always enjoy looking at the old days for that. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into a demonstration of just some sample digital implementations of what a utility can do when you get out of the paper world and get into the digital world. So it's not going to be like a full in-depth demo of all the Sedaru functionality. That's going to be for the additional parts of the DROPPS framework. But digital today, we're really just going to focus on getting your data into a system that can be leveraged for for the future. So bear with me one moment while I share my screen.
Yep. And while Kevin's doing that, feel free to kind of to shoot any questions into either that Q&A window that you see that exists down here, or in the chat window here. Happy to answer those any questions that folks have there about any of these pieces.
All right. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, looks good. Looks great.
All right. Excellent.
So we're looking at a tablet here, Kevin?
We are, yeah. So I'm working off of my iPad right now, and yeah. So this is you can see me basically using an iPad. This can also be used on a phone. You can use it on a desktop, laptop, two-in-one. So very flexible as far as, what device we want to use for that. But really, it's a significant milestone for some utilities to actually get their water system from a CAD drawing or a paper environment to at their fingertips on something like this. And that's really what the D in digital and the D in drops is all about. So with that, what we're looking at is, all the different layers that we would have access to now. So the pipes, the valves, really anything else that you wanted to collect, you'd have the ability to see that in a very interactive, very easy to use format. So, kind of the pinching, the panning, all of the expectations that we'd have nowadays when we're interacting with, Google Maps, when we're getting driving directions, or, anything that's related to that, we have the same look and feel and interface within Sedaru.
I mean, here's one piece of advice that I give everybody is that if you want to go digital in the field, right, do not make your guys use a keyboard, right?
Yeah.
Don't make them use a mouse, right? Everybody knows how to use a phone. Using that phone is so easy and it transfers really quickly and easily to using a tablet, right? So, and I have this conversation with IT people all the time, right? Because there's many IT people that know how to buy Windows hardware. Like that's really easy and straightforward to them. And like buying an iOS tablet and deploying that is for some folks is a little strange, right? So it's orders of magnitude easier. And you will achieve success way faster than trying to make your field guys type in a bunch of things on a keyboard and go through a whole bunch of sort of legacy Windows pieces that probably exist in your networks to get them to use stuff in the field.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget, in the early days of GIS, I recall training some utilities on just some older software that required that. You needed a mouse, or you needed, to select and then change to a different tool to zoom, and then change a different tool to, select this and that. And what happens was, I would spend like an hour or two just on like moving the map around and how to select things, because it's just like, wait, what? And then I have to change to this tool, and just the zooming and panning piece, took a huge amount of time. With this, when you're just able to pinch and zoom and tap what you want,
just using your fingers.
Yeah. So that was really interesting to see, kind of the way it was, and just that simple, paradigm shift in how we interact with a map and how that can be enabled for anyone it's really cool to see that evolution. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I'll tap on this red hydrant on the map, and that'll pull up a info screen that has any information that we want on it. So this is pretty common, and when we talk about the digital transformation of a utility, it usually starts with getting all of their maps into a digital form, and that also means they probably don't have a lot of detail on those items, right? So when I click on this hydrant, there's no history, there's no manufacturer or model, there's no flow variables or pressure readings, anything that's been collected here. It's just nothing there other than the fact that it's a fantastic fire hydrant, which is great news. But the reality is, when you first get your system to digital, these attributes aren't going to be there. So what's important is to have a tool that when I get this in a digital format, it's easy enough for us to go through and start populating these attributes.
Let me ask you a question here, Kevin, that popped up. Where is this underlying data that we're seeing here stored? Like, where's it coming from? Is it Sedaru? Like, what kind of back end are we talking about?
Yeah. So the good news is this is a geodatabase feature class. So there's multiple sources that can be used depending on what level of integration and real-time connections you want to make. And we'll talk more on that as we get further along into the series. But for this example right here, and for a very large percentage of our customers, this is just pointing to a GIS attribute or a GIS feature class within their environment. So, and that can be hosted by them within their ArcGIS server or portal, or we can host that on their behalf. So either way, there's some flexibility there. But it's all just a industry standard Esri GIS. There's no kind of third-party component that we are bolting onto it to make it proprietary or unusable. All right. So when I go ahead and start my work, so I'm at this hydrant, I want to click on it, and I want to enter in some information. So what's nice is the ability to set up different data entry forms. At its core, a digital environment will have us grant us the ability to collect data on these things. So we can do things like inspections, we can do flushing, flow tests. So if we look at hydrant inspection as our first example, what this does is it takes us to a really simple form with these big tiles, right? So I can go through each one and easily enter in these values. And to your point, we didn't want it to be a bunch of keyboards and typing. We have numeric keypads, we have pick list controls. So easily able to change that, update that here without a whole lot of typing or other required. So can go through here, sidewalk, and start filling out any of these details. So
my rule of thumb too is, like, if it takes you more than 30 seconds to kind of fill out all the information for stuff you're doing in the field, especially for something simple, right?
Yeah.
Especially for, like you said, a hydrant inspection and stuff like that. I mean, it can't take long. It cannot take a long time, right? I mean, otherwise people are not going to do it. They're going to go out there and they're going to find every reason to make it fail, right? So it's super important that the software supports it really well, but then even thinking about how you sort of set up your tests and you do these things, got to make sure it's easy for people to get from step to step and to get that data entered in there quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah, so in the case of this, you can set up different fields, some that are required, some that aren't, but you get the idea as far as the data entry. So easily being able to enter in that value here. I want to show you as example, so I just hit done, and now we can see that these specifications have now updated. So the next time I come to this hydrant, which could be a year from now, it could be a couple days from now, when I select that, now I have detailed information about it. I have manufacturer and model. All of these things that we collected when we were there doing our regular inspection is now available for the next person, including a detailed asset history. So as as folks end up retiring or moving on from the utility, and the younger generation comes in, having this digital representation of what's happening and everything that's going on is super valuable. And with this, we can take it a step further, whether it's not just looking at info and history, but also doing some things like calculations and kind of saving some headaches as far as the all the things that a user would need to collect out there. So fire flow test is a good example. So if we're out there and our static pressure is 77, our residual drops down to 52. Our hose monster pitot gauge is telling us 35. It's out of the 2.5-inch port. We're flushing it for 5 minutes or so. And then here's our diffuser that we used. So you can see that at the bottom here, the flow at 20 psi, and the gallons used was calculated automatically. So all of those things where we can leverage the information that's collected, but also do some really powerful things with saving time. The guys aren't out there with calculators or flow charts. It's just doing the work for them.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's interesting because you'll see that through just about everything we do on a Sedaru side of things, is that we're going to help calculate water loss values as well. So as you go digital, you're also getting this ability to do calculations on the fly, right? And that has the ability to be transformative. This is a pretty simple example, but We have lots of folks that are using Sedaru in conjunction with sensor data or SCADA information that's in there, water quality data that allows me to, from a field perspective, be collecting data, be referencing it against sensors in the field that are there, and be able to do calculations together against all of that, and really easily let you know in the field, is there something going on that I need to be worried about? So I think that's one of the other real advantages to going digitally, is that in many organizations, the field staff becomes just the people out in the field sort of doing a task, and they are many times sort of given roles where they're not supposed to think, right? And so as you can go digitally with some of this stuff and empower them with more information, it's actually way easier to be able to let those folks in the field make a lot more decisions and drive a lot more things, and really drive up the efficiency with how you're able to tackle a lot of your day-to-day issues.
Absolutely. All right. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as the digital framework, I want to show just a couple more examples, and then we'll dive into questions and wrap up here. But showing another very simple example. The valve exercise is a good one, because there's not a whole lot of detail that you need to collect on that. So if I were to tap a valve on the street, here we can see, depending on which one I click, I may have different attributes here. So because they reopened this main line after a break in 2017, now I have data on this valve, which is great. So if I wanted to go through and actually do a valve exercise, here we are in 2019, we'll go ahead and start that. And then here is an ultra simple form, right? So operable, yes or no. Is it open? Yep. How many turns? So it's 25, 58 inches deep, and done today. We need to come back with a vacuum. Now we're good. We're able to get on the valve net, and then off we go. So the data entry component becomes very fast. When you see, I love watching our crews after, a few months of use, because they can go through this faster than I can in a heartbeat. I mean, it's just boom, 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 boom. It's, it's easy enough for them to, click the big tiles, move on to the next asset, and, they're not spending time entering data. They're not spending time writing down data and going back to the office and typing it back in. So, the man hours spent are definitely significant.
Yep, absolutely. No, you're right. It's fun to see people be able to see kind of the efficiencies go up, because we've seen that with lots of folks that they're tackling 20-30% more tasks. They're that much more productive when their digital strategy is going well.
Yeah. All right. So, if we look at a couple other examples here, I'm going to fire up just one more for us so we can take a look at that. But this is the example I'm going to show here is a utility that actually did not have, really a digital system yet. So they had some GIS, they had some AutoCAD, but what this, the digital transformation allowed them to put it all into a true, ArcGIS server geodatabase that they could leverage for the future. So, if we show this example here, and this is, showing Sedaru Field Force for Windows, so running on my 2-in-1, running on a Surface, running on a laptop, whatever you have. But what's nice is, taking the digital components and data entry a step further, where, I can look at, kind of core attributes or core assets within my utility, but it's not just limited to just a few. So in the case of maybe USA tickets, right? So we have all of the, active 811 dig alert tickets, and depending on your state, you have different, there's a different one call center and a different ticket that comes in. But Sedaru has we built a technology to incorporate those, so that way you can manage this process again through, in a digital way. It just saves tons of time. So if we're looking at, a ticket in this example, so, we can pull that in, and then all of the ticket details get parsed into, a nice GIS format. And then as far as the, the data entry on that, if I look at all of the completed work, and, here's some locates that were done earlier. So being able to pull that up, and then here I can see, okay, what information do we collect on this? So, the county assets in the dig alert area, does it need field verification? Was it marked? And then having all of this available, right? So being able to take those photos and then capture that as part of this locate, and then ultimately send that back to, to the one call center. If your 811 system requires positive response, we can support that. So there's a number of ways that you can really take advantage of just getting digital, even if it's just one workflow, right? It doesn't have to be the entire utility. Just, hey, our ticket management's a total pain. Let's start with that. So it's nice.
It's a great point. I mean, there are so many people that I have met with, Kevin, that because of the 811 process, right, that one call locate process, they spend their day starting with printing out emails, then going and finding the map piece, printing out that map piece, right? And then like assigning that to somebody. Then that person goes out in the field, marks that stuff out, and it comes back to the office. It's insane how the process works. And dig tickets are interesting because there's folks dealing with, hundreds of dig tickets that come in a day, depending on the size of the utility. So, yeah, and it's neat. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to talk about dig tickets a little bit more as we progress on the drops piece, and how in a real-time basis those can come in and do this. But what you kind of see here is that it will automatically show up on that tablet, the location in the area that needs to get marked out, and then you can kind of quickly, easily enter your form in there, or enter all the data. And then what's cool is have pictures associated with it too. I mean, because that's the other piece of when we talk about going digitally. When you were doing things on paper or you're filling stuff out on paper, there's just not a straightforward workflow to take the pictures that you might be capturing also while you're out there, and to have those attached and get to those areas. So, right, that's great. So Kevin, did you have any other pieces you wanted to show us right at the moment, or do we want to just kind of jump into questions from here?
Yeah, I think we can kind of start addressing some questions and wrap up here. I don't want us to spend too much time. There's so much more that we can get to, as we get to real time, as we get to optimized and, predictive, preemptive, and self-driving. So all of those pieces, there's a lot more great things to share. But, really want us to just round out and emphasize that, just going digital, however small or however, focused you want to do that, it's possible, and it's a process that really leads you to all these other great things that you can get to in the future.
So let me relay a couple questions here, and we can try and figure out some answers here. So one question is just to talk in general. What are the options for working digitally in areas with poor connectivity, poor cellular coverage? Like what are your recommendations there, Kevin? How do we handle that?
Yeah, I mean, there's, the good news is, generally speaking, connectivity is getting better. But that doesn't mean that every spot is, has great connectivity. I've just seen too many utilities that there's just straight dead zones where, you can't even work. So within Sedaru, the ability to have an offline data set and to be able to work offline, the system will detect if your connectivity goes below a certain threshold, and then you can continue to kind of work without interruption. So yeah, it's a real important piece. So whereas we see the improvement, and with the introduction of the 5G and all these things, yes, it's going to get better, but that's not where we're at today. So incorporating a robust offline mode was key in Sedaru Field Force, which we have implemented today.
Yeah, and so that can work fully offline, or it can work in like a poor coverage situation too, right? So like what's the difference? I mean, how does that work differently?
Well, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference as far as how it works. Really, it's just you can choose to be offline for as long as you want. So that can be, if you want to choose to spend the whole day offline, you can do that work. And then as soon as you want to go live again, there's a way to actually, explicitly say, okay, I'm going back up, and then that'll synchronize any changes and download any new work orders as appropriate. But the recommended approach is to stay as near real time as possible and let the system make that decision. So if you have that enabled within your setup, then that'll actually provide a status kind of on the bottom right corner that says, you know, either you're live or you're offline. And then depending on the connectivity, that will toggle on its own.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So here's another question: how configurable is everything?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like meaning, like if I just want to do inspections versus doing work orders, or I just want to be updating map data, like how does that work?
Yeah, so you know, I think that'll be an important one for us to show in an upcoming webinar. But the Sedaru Studio tool is really the place where you would do that, and that's where you not only manage your users and your profiles, but also that's where you're going to manage your data entry forms. So which forms we want to look at, which assets those are tied to, and then all the settings of, do I want it to go directly to my geodatabase? Do I want it to go to a history table somewhere? All of that can be configured all within a really easy to use format.
Gotcha. Cool. Hey, you know what? I'm going to try and share something here real quick on my end, Kevin, while we're finishing up answering questions here. My internet connection has not been great, so you might have to bear with me for one second. But I did want to show something from like a configuration perspective, that you are able to also configure things from a full work order perspective. I don't know if you can see my screen yet, Kevin, or not.
No, it's still thinking.
Okay. Yeah. So you have the ability to not just to do a full work order, right? So I can be looking at things like my employee time. I can be looking at the materials used. I can be looking at the equipment used. I can get down to some very, very granular detail there. And what I like is that we have managed to interface all of those things in such a way that are, really simple, really straightforward for people, so that your field staff tend to really appreciate it.
Yeah, and we are seeing that now. So that looks great with the, you got the work order details and then time, material, equipment. So.
Right. Yep, exactly. And so what you have the ability to do is to kind of fill out all of that customer information first, right? All of those pieces, any data that you want around it. This is, a meter related kind of workflow. And then once I've completed those pieces, then I can come in and I can do all my, employee time, materials, and all those pieces too. So it really is, really is very configurable.
Yeah.
And let's see, last question we had popping up. Well, it's a couple things, right? So let's tackle this last question, and then we got a couple of announcements here.
Sure.
So the last question was really around, the Sedaru product suite has a lot of there's different pieces, right? So we're showing the field force piece. There's an office-based piece called Omni. There's we call CIP for doing risk-based capital planning. There's a hydraulic modeling piece. There's, there's a healthy list of products, 6 or 7 different products there. And so the question was sort of like, how does that get licensed and how does that get done? And you can license things separately. You can license them together. We can essentially put together a solution that matches exactly what your needs are, what things look like for you. So you have lots of different options there. So the way that Sedaru is set up is you generally are able to kind of just pay for the parts that you're going to be using with the number of users that you're going to have. So it's pretty flexible in there. Cool. So upcoming, Kevin, unless you have anything else to add on the digital front for the moment.
No, I think I think we did a pretty fair job with going through everything and showing just the one starting point of your digital transformation, from paper into kind of the promised land. And yeah, I think this sets the stage, but there's so much more that we're excited to share.
Absolutely. So if everybody marks on their calendars August 15th like four Thursdays from now, 4 weeks from now, we're going to keep rolling along on the drops strategy here. So we're going to get into the real-time piece next, like I said, in 4 weeks on that Thursday, talk about some of this stuff in more detail. And really the plan is to continue doing these every sort of 4 to 6 weeks as we kind of progress through the drops piece and showing how different pieces of the Sedaru software ties into that. But the format will be similar in terms of you can ask any questions you want, and we'll do our best to answer any of those too. So I mean, it doesn't have to be 100% specific to the topic at hand. We're here to answer questions and to do that. So and so I think there's a poll question that's going around as well too in terms of registering for that next one. So if you mark yes on that, that'd be great, and we can make sure we'll get you registered and get your reminders sent out and everything that you can get going right from there without having to do any extra work. So good, Kevin. Anything else you want to add before we sign off today?
No, just a huge thanks to everyone for taking time out of the morning or afternoon, whatever side of the world you're on. And yeah, like I said, just really looking forward to continuing down this path and sharing the roadmap for drops.
Sounds good. Great. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for your time. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.